Caleb Marshall stood ankle-deep in the dark, cool waters of the beach, his fishing rod firmly gripped in one hand. The night was calm, the kind of calm that blanketed the world in serenity. Overhead, stars scattered across the sky in a glittering display, their light undisturbed by the artificial glow of city lamps or the noise of human activity. This beach was his sanctuary, a refuge where the world shrank down to the quiet rhythm of the sea. Fishing wasn't just Caleb's livelihood, it was his escape, his meditation. He had spent countless nights here, listening to the waves lap gently against the shore, feeling the tug of the line as something unseen stirred in the depths. The ocean was his confidant, his companion, but tonight, something felt different. The air carried an energy he couldn't quite place, a subtle tension that made the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. He cast his line and waited, his sharp eyes scanning the surface of the water, watching for the slightest disturbance. It was then that he heard a voice, soft and melodic, yet with a timbre that made it seem almost unreal. "You're quite skilled at this," the voice said. Startled, Caleb turned his head sharply, his grip tightening on the rod. He hadn't heard anyone approach, and this stretch of beach was usually deserted at night. At first, he didn't look directly at the speaker, assuming it was another fisherman or perhaps a curious passerby. "Thanks," he replied, his tone polite but wary. He reeled in his line and glanced over his shoulder. When he finally laid eyes on the source of the voice, he froze. Standing just a few feet away was a woman unlike anyone Caleb had ever seen. Her appearance was striking, almost otherworldly. Her hair, a shimmering cascade of silver, seemed to catch the moonlight and reflect it back in soft waves. Her skin had an iridescent glow, as if kissed by starlight itself. But it was her eyes that truly captivated him, large and luminous, like twin galaxies that seemed to hold infinite depth. "May I try?" she asked, gesturing toward his fishing rod. For a moment, Caleb could only stare, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. But something about her presence was disarming, calming even. Without fully understanding why, he found himself nodding and handing her the rod. She took it with an eager smile, her delicate fingers brushing against his as she did. Caleb felt a jolt at the contact, as though he had touched a live wire. "What do I do?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Caleb quickly explained the basics, showing her how to hold the rod and cast the line. She watched him closely, her movements deliberate as she mimicked his actions. Her focus was intense, as though she was committing every detail to memory. When she finally cast the line, Caleb couldn't help but be impressed. Her technique was almost flawless, as if she had been doing this for years. "Like this?" she asked, glancing at him for approval. "Exactly like that," he said, unable to hide the admiration in his voice. To Caleb's astonishment, the line tugged almost immediately. The woman's face lit up with excitement as she began reeling in the catch. Caleb stepped closer, ready to assist, but she managed it with surprising ease. When the fish finally broke the surface, she held it up triumphantly, her expression a mix of wonder and delight. "What is this long, slender creature?" she asked, turning the fish in her hands as if trying to decipher its secrets. "That's a croaker," Caleb said, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "They're not the easiest to catch. You must have a lucky touch." "Croaker," she repeated, her voice lilting as she tested the unfamiliar word. Caleb found himself laughing softly. There was something almost childlike about her curiosity, a pure, unfiltered sense of wonder that he hadn't seen in anyone in years. But beneath his amusement was a growing sense of intrigue. Who was she? And what was she doing here, alone, on this secluded beach? He took the rod back and cast the line again, deciding it was time to get some answers. So he began, keeping his tone casual. "What's your name, and where are you from?" The woman hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "My name is Vera," she said finally. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon. "I'm from Astra Colony." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Never heard of it. Sounds far away." "It is," Vera said, a faint smile playing on her lips, very far. Her cryptic response only deepened Caleb's curiosity. "And what brings you here, to this beach, I mean?" "I come here often," Vera admitted. "This place, it soothes me. It feels different from where I'm from, calmer, more alive." Caleb nodded slowly. "I get that. This beach does the same for me. It's why I'm out here most nights. See that tent over there?" He pointed to a small structure tucked away near the rocks. "That's mine. I camp out here and fish till morning. It's my way of keeping the world at bay." They fished and talked for hours, their conversation flowing as naturally as the waves. Vera spoke of Astra Colony in fragments, painting a picture of a place that sounded both wondrous and isolating. Caleb shared stories of his life by the sea, the simplicity and solitude of it, and the peace he found in the ocean's embrace. As the hours slipped by, Caleb found himself drawn to Vera in a way he couldn't quite explain. She was like no one he had ever met, mysterious yet open, otherworldly yet profoundly human. Eventually, Vera glanced at the sky, her expression tinged with regret. "I should go," she said softly. Caleb's chest tightened. He didn't want the night to end. "Stay," he said, his voice quieter than he intended. "At least for a little while. Let me show you more of what this place has to offer." Vera hesitated, her luminous eyes searching his face. Finally, she nodded. "All right." They walked to his tent together, and Caleb prepared a simple meal of grilled fish. As they ate, the soft crackle of the fire filled the silence between their words, blending harmoniously with the distant rhythm of the waves. Caleb carefully laid out another portion of fish, his hands deft and practiced, yet his focus wasn't on his task. His attention was on Vera, on the way her luminous eyes darted around the tent, studying its modest interior as though it were some grand wonder, and on the small, thoughtful smiles that crossed her lips whenever he spoke. "This might sound silly," Caleb began, glancing at her, "but I always thought I'd die here. Not in a bad way, just this place feels like home, you know? Like I belong to it as much as it belongs to me." Vera tilted her head slightly, her silver hair catching the flickering firelight. "That's not silly," she said softly, "belonging to a place. It's a kind of love, isn't it? A connection. I don't think I've ever felt that where I'm from." Caleb frowned slightly, leaning back against a pile of folded blankets. "How's that possible? You talk about Astra Colony like it's this amazing place. Beautiful, advanced, full of wonders. How could you not feel connected to that?" Vera sighed, her gaze dropping to the plate in her hands. "It is beautiful," she admitted. "The skies are never dark. They shimmer with shifting lights that look like living auroras. The buildings rise like crystal towers, each designed to harmonize with the land. And the technology, it's beyond what I could even begin to explain." She paused, her expression clouding. "But all of it feels hollow sometimes. Perfect on the surface, but beneath it, there's this unspoken expectation, this pressure to be part of the system, to fulfill your role, to never question. Everyone acts like it's paradise, but I..." She trailed off, staring into the fire. "You don't feel like you belong," Caleb finished for her. Her eyes flicked to his, surprised, but she nodded. "Exactly." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled between them, its warm light dancing across their faces. "I get that," Caleb said finally. "Not in the same way, maybe, but I get it. I've lived in this town my whole life, surrounded by people who've known me since I was a kid. But sometimes I feel like a stranger to them. Like they don't really see me for who I am." Vera studied him, her gaze searching. "But the sea sees you," she said quietly. Caleb blinked, startled by her words. It wasn't something he'd ever thought about before, but somehow it felt true. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess it does." A small smile tugged at Vera's lips. "I envy that. I envy the way you've found a place that accepts you just as you are." Caleb chuckled softly, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if the sea accepts me, or if I just force myself on it every night," he said, half joking. "But it's enough for me. It's always been enough." Vera's smile faded, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "Do you think people like us ever find more than enough? Do you think we can find everything? Her question hung in the air, weighty and unspoken. Caleb's chest tightened as he looked at her, at the faint shimmer of hope in her cosmic eyes. He wanted to tell her yes, that everything was possible, that she deserved to feel whole. But his words felt clumsy compared to the magnitude of her question. I think, he said slowly, that maybe we don't find everything all at once. Maybe it comes in pieces, and we have to figure out how to hold on to them when they come. Vera stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, to his surprise, she reached across the small space between them and placed her hand over his. Her touch was cool but not cold, like the soft brush of a wave on a still night. Maybe, she said softly, maybe you're right. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Caleb's thumb brushed against the back of her hand, and Vera didn't pull away. Instead, she shifted closer, her presence enveloping him like the tide. Caleb, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the fire. Yeah, she hesitated, as though weighing her next words. Do you ever think about what's out there? Beyond the stars, beyond what you can see? Sometimes, he admitted, not in a serious way though. It's hard to think about all that when you're so focused on what's in front of you. What if I told you, Vera said, her voice trembling slightly, that you're part of something bigger than this beach, this town, this world? That you belong to something as vast as the stars themselves? Caleb frowned, not out of disbelief, but out of confusion. I don't follow, he said carefully. Vera took a deep breath, her hand tightening around his. Astra Colony isn't just a place. It's a way of being, a connection to the universe, to everything that exists. When I came here tonight, I didn't just come to fish or to escape. I came to find someone like you. His heart raced at her words, but he stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. There's something about you, Caleb, she said, something I can't explain. I feel it when I'm near you, like a pull, like the universe is trying to bring us together. And I don't know why, but I think you're meant to come back with me. Double quotes. Her words hit him like a wave, knocking the breath from his lungs. Back with you, he repeated. To Astra Colony, she said, to the stars. The fire crackled, the ocean whispered, and the universe seemed to hold its breath. Why me? Caleb asked finally. Because, Vera said, her voice trembling, you already belong there. You just don't know it yet. Caleb's mind swirled with confusion. He tried to process Vera's words, grappling with the enormity of what she was suggesting. Stars, the Astra Colony, and now the idea that he was somehow a part of this cosmic destiny. It all felt so surreal, like something out of a dream. Wait, he said, his voice steady but laced with disbelief. You're saying I'm connected to this Astra Colony, to the stars? How? I've never even left this planet, Vera. Vera's eyes softened, filled with a mix of understanding and something deeper, something Caleb couldn't quite name. You may not have left this planet, Caleb, but your essence, your energy, it resonates with the stars. It's something I've only ever felt in a few others. It's rare, but undeniable. Caleb frowned, his gaze dropping to the fire between them. He poked at the embers with a stick, watching sparks leap into the air. I'm just a fisherman, he said quietly. A guy who spends his nights on this beach, catching fish and avoiding the rest of the world. How could I possibly be part of something bigger? Vera leaned forward, her voice gentle yet firm. Sometimes, the most extraordinary things are found in the most ordinary places. You may see yourself as just a fisherman, but to me, you're so much more. There's a reason the stars called me here tonight, Caleb, and there's a reason they brought me to you. Caleb's chest tightened at her words. There was sincerity in her tone, a conviction that made it hard to dismiss what she was saying. Still, the idea was overwhelming. The life he knew, the simple existence he had carved out for himself, was he really ready to leave it all behind? He looked up at Vera, her luminous eyes watching him with an intensity that made his heart race. If I say yes, he began, his voice hesitant, if I go with you, what happens then? What would my life look like? Vera smiled, though it was tinged with a sadness Caleb didn't fully understand. "I can't promise it will be easy," she admitted. "The stars are vast and beautiful, but they can also be lonely. Astra Colony is different. It's not like here. But what I can promise is that you'll find purpose. You'll discover parts of yourself you never knew existed, and—" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to where their hands still touched. "You won't have to do it alone. I'll be there every step of the way." Her words hung in the air, filling the small space between them with a weight that felt almost tangible. Caleb's mind raced, memories of his life flashing before him, nights spent under the stars, the quiet rhythm of the sea, the solitude he had come to accept as his constant companion. But then there was Vera. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, her presence as vast and mysterious as the ocean itself. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him, a longing, not just for her, but for something greater. He took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around hers. "Okay," he said finally. "I don't know what's waiting for me out there, but if you're asking me to take a leap, I'll do it." Vera's eyes widened, and for a moment, she simply stared at him as if she hadn't expected him to agree so readily. Then a brilliant smile spread across her face, one that made Caleb's chest ache in the best way. "You won't regret this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'd better not," he replied, his tone light but his expression serious. Vera stood, pulling Caleb up with her. "There's one thing you should know," she said, her smile fading slightly. "Leaving Earth, it's not like taking a trip. It's a one-way journey. Once you're there, there's no coming back." Caleb hesitated, her words sinking in. He glanced around the tent, his gaze lingering on the fishing rod propped in the corner, the blankets he'd carefully folded, the fire slowly burning itself out. This place had been his home for so long. Was he really ready to leave it behind? But when his eyes returned to Vera, standing there with her silver hair glowing in the firelight and her hand outstretched toward him, the answer was clear. "I've been looking for something my whole life," he said. "Maybe this is it." Vera nodded, her smile returning as she squeezed his hand. "Then let's go." Together, they stepped out of the tent and into the cool night air. The stars above seemed brighter than ever, as if they were lighting a path just for them. Vera raised her free hand, and a faint hum filled the air. Caleb's breath caught as a beam of shimmering light descended from the sky, enveloping them in a warm, ethereal glow. The light wasn't blinding, but soft, its golden hue illuminating every grain of sand around them. The hum grew louder, resonating in his chest like the rhythmic pounding of the waves, yet it carried a melody that felt ancient, almost alive. He looked at Vera, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. She gave him a reassuring smile, her luminous eyes steady as they met his. "It's okay," she said, her voice calm amidst the rising energy around them. "Just breathe. The stars have been waiting for you." The beam began to lift them gently off the ground, and Caleb instinctively tightened his grip on Vera's hand. His feet left the sand, the weight of the world slipping away as they ascended. A sudden rush of wind swept past them, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and the sea, and Caleb realized it wasn't just the earth he was leaving behind, it was the life he had always known. As they rose higher, the beam expanded, revealing what lay beyond. Above them, the night sky seemed to stretch infinitely, its inky darkness pierced by countless stars. Yet now, those stars didn't feel distant. They felt close, as though he could reach out and touch them. "Vera," he said, his voice barely audible over the hum. "What happens now? Where are we going?" She turned to him, her silver hair glowing in the light. "To a place where you'll finally understand who you are," she said, "and who we are together." Before he could ask what she meant, the beam carried them through a shimmering portal that seemed to ripple like water. The moment they passed through, the hum faded, replaced by an overwhelming silence. But it wasn't the kind of silence Caleb was used to. It was vast, filled with the unspoken whispers of the universe itself. They were floating now, suspended in what seemed like a cosmic void. All around them, stars blazed in vivid colors, constellations weaving stories across the expanse of space. Planets loomed in the distance, their surfaces glinting with hues of green, blue, and red. "Welcome to the in-between," Vera said, her voice echoing softly in the stillness. Caleb turned to her, his brow furrowed. "The in-between?" She nodded, gesturing to the expanse around them. "It's a liminal space neither here nor there. A crossing point between your world and Astra Colony. It gives you time to adjust, to prepare." Caleb looked around in awe. "Prepare for what?" "For what's waiting on the other side," she said. "Astra Colony isn't like Earth. Its beauty, its complexity. It can be overwhelming, but here you can take a moment to find your balance." He tried to ground himself, to focus on the weightless sensation of floating, but his mind kept returning to the vastness surrounding them. "How is this even possible?" he asked. "I mean, how are we here? How is this real?" Vera smiled, her expression patient. "Reality isn't as rigid as you've been taught to believe. The universe is more connected than you think, Caleb. Everything you've ever seen, felt, or dreamed of, it's all part of a larger web. You're part of it, too." Caleb let her words sink in, his gaze drifting to the stars around them. "It's beautiful," he admitted, "but it's also terrifying." "That's normal," Vera said gently. "The unknown always is, but you're not alone in this. I'll be with you every step of the way." Her words brought a surprising sense of comfort, grounding him in a way he hadn't expected. He turned back to her, the question that had been burning in his mind finally escaping his lips. "Why me, Vera? Why did you choose me?" She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I didn't choose you, Caleb," she said at last. "The universe did. From the moment I first saw you on that beach, I felt it, a connection, a pull that I couldn't ignore. You have a part to play in what's to come, something even I don't fully understand yet. But I know this, you were meant for more than the life you left behind." Her words stirred something deep within him, a sense of purpose he had never felt before. He didn't fully understand it, but for the first time, he felt a spark of belief that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of something greater. The silence of the in-between began to shift, a soft vibration rippling through the air. Vera's gaze lifted, her expression brightening. "It's time," she said, her voice filled with anticipation. "Time for what?" Caleb asked, his heart quickening. "To cross over," she said simply. Before he could respond, the void around them began to shimmer, the stars blurring into streaks of light. The sensation of movement returned, faster and more intense than before, as though they were being pulled towards something immense and indescribable. When the motion stopped, Caleb found himself standing on solid ground once more. But the world around him was unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering crystalline structures rose into the sky, their surfaces reflecting rainbows of light. The air shimmered with energy, alive with the hum of unseen forces. And above it all, the sky was a tapestry of swirling colors, shifting and changing like a living aurora. "Welcome to Astra Colony," Vera said, her voice soft but filled with pride. Caleb stared in awe, his breath catching in his throat. The beauty of the place was overwhelming, almost too much to take in. But amidst the wonder, he felt a sense of belonging, as though a part of him had been waiting for this moment his entire life. As he turned to Vera, her smile reassured him once more. For the first time since their journey began, he felt truly at peace. And as they stepped forward together, Caleb knew his life would never be the same.